Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I know I haven't been here for a minute, I think like 2 weeks. Well, I wasn't just, taking a hiatus. I've been working, grinding, doing job stuff and school stuff because, school's been picking up. But actually, speaking of, school, I decided to make this video about how to ace your midterms, your exams. We're in that time of the semester when you're having test to test, back to back, all that, and it can be a little hard, to maintain or to balance it all. So I'm gonna come at you guys with a few tips on how I study for my exam. So as you guys know, I'm a bio major, and since I'm in my senior year, I'm taking a lot of like bio electives. And as much as you would think like, oh, they're probably more straightforward because I got to pick the electives, I'm kind of like, trying to figure out and decipher how I can incorporate my study techniques from when I was taking the main like orgo, biochem, all that with my electives. And for the most part, most of the techniques are the same. Maybe I have to switch up things a few here and there. And basically I want to show you guys how I study and some tips. So let's just roll to that clip of me explaining how I study and how I make my packets and all that, and then I'll come back at you with some more tips. Okay guys, so this is the first, these are the notes I took. So this is the first batch of notes I made, and these are the second batch of notes I made. And basically what I did was I made like the first set of notes, like things I kind of knew already, like the first 2 PowerPoints, which I was a little bit more familiar with because I had a quiz on it. And when I was done writing the notes like from the PowerPoint and like making sure I write them in like a clear, bold, obvious manner of what it is I'm talking about, so it's not just pages of words. So like if I was talking about something, put it in big bold headings and then like list of what it is. Then if it's something completely different, like a new topic, put a squiggly line and then write the new topic. So like by doing it this way, I was able to go back and annotate, as you can see, like the pens and the highlighters and stuff like that. And I was able to like figure out what it is that worked for me, and I figure out what I didn't know and what I did know. And then I did that for the second one, like this, same thing, basically, like just lots of like subheadings and stuff like that, and figure out what I do know and what I don't know. So by the time I was done with all of this, I was able to go to my Quizlet, which is I'm about to show you, and review. So the Quizlet I had made on Friday was like, I just divided like, first PowerPoint, and just like arranged it in the order of the PowerPoint. And then what I would do is like, okay, so this is the original set. Let me go back. So this is the original set. And what I would do is, because it's so much, like it was 36 terms. And if you try learning it, or if you try going on any kind of the games or the settings up here, it's just gonna be in random order. And I didn't want to learn a lot of random things, like not in order and without context. So I started like 12 at a time, I believe. And when I was done starring those, I would learn those, then start the next 12 like that until I was done with the 36. And by the time I did that, plus reading these notes, I had a lot more context to be able to prepare and do the games and the tools on the sidebar. One thing I will say though is Quizlet, don't make it your only source of studying, because there's not much context if you don't have pictures too. That kind of makes it just a lot of words, and feels more like cramming at that point. I mean, essentially we're cramming regardless, but make it a little bit more doable by writing stuff down, then typing up your Quizlet. It reinforces learning. It doesn't just on its own help you grasp everything. So that's what I did. But to be very honest, by the time I had finished making like the 3rd Quizlet, because I made like 3 for how many PowerPoints there were in terms. No, I didn't even make 3. There's more, I think. There's like, let me go here. Yeah, there were 2 more that I didn't even touch because it was just so much that I just ended up relying on my notes. But if you do have less material, you can use Quizlet. But when you have a lot, I don't really recommend Quizlet, because you probably won't be able to get through everything twice if it's a lot of terms. So that's just my truth. So we'll see what I got on the test, but this is basically what I did so far. And yeah. So one thing you want to do whenever you're studying, it doesn't matter what class you're studying for, it doesn't matter what exam it is, whether it's a quiz, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you write down notes. And like sometimes for some people, typing on the computer is enough, but for me, I can't just type notes. I have to also write it down manually. So sometimes I might write notes as the teacher's talking, just so like it shows I'm participating, but I don't really count that as my studying. What I do is I come back and take notes again and rewrite it, like what I showed you guys in the last clip. And sometimes what you can do is, if you're not really understanding what you're writing or you're not comprehending it, you can watch YouTube videos over those topics and draw diagrams for yourself, especially for like biological pathways, all that stuff, chemical pathways. If you're biochem, bio, any of that stuff, you're gonna have to draw and look at visuals. I'm not much of a textbook person, so I'm not about to start telling you like, oh, go to the book and look for diagrams, because most teachers already incorporate the good diagrams in the slides. But if you have a teacher who doesn't do that, then yeah, go to your textbook, look for diagrams that align with what you're talking about, and draw those diagrams. Maybe they'll give you a better idea of what the steps are, what's happening, you know. I guess another tip I would also say is talk to your professors. Sometimes professors, the way they explain something in class is different from how they explain it one-on-one. If you just, you know, listen in class, sometimes you'll notice that like they skim through it really fast. They don't really break down things as much as, you know, they would if you go in one-on-one. You can stop them easily when you're in their office, because also like another thing is when you're, you know, paying attention, you're listening in class, when you don't know what's going on, you don't know what you don't understand. Like you don't know what questions to ask and stuff, because you're learning it for the first time. What teachers usually say is, oh, read before class, you know, read ahead of time so you know what we're talking about by the time class starts. Ideally, like that sounds really wonderful, but sometimes, you know, we don't have time to do that. And maybe even if you do have like a day to do that, you can be tired after taking other classes or finishing an exam for a different class. You know, you don't want to just start reading again. So you just give yourself that break, which is definitely, you need to recharge. That's fine. Like I'm not about to condemn anyone, because that's literally what I do. But so by class time, say you didn't read, so you don't understand what they're talking about, go into their office hours and just be like, hey, you know, I didn't understand what you were talking about here. Or after I finally studied, or I started reading up over the weekend, I kind of had more questions based on what you talked about in class. You know, be respectful. Don't make it obvious that you don't pay attention in class, because then the teacher's gonna be out to get you, you know. So what I would also say is try to go to class, you know, especially if it's a class where attendance isn't required, but like, you know that your teacher really highly suggest it. Go to your class so that your teacher can be like, okay, this person comes to class, they pay attention, so now that they're coming to my office hours, I don't feel some type of way, like I actually know that they care, you know. So I suggest doing that. I would also say study groups. Now, before people come for me, because I know there's been a lot of stigmas with study groups and stuff like that, you might want to, you know, establish a set study group for each class, so you're not constantly changing your study group, because that can be distracting. So what you could do is, if you know a group of people who are also as serious as you see them paying attention in class, take good notes, they study, you know, regularly and stuff, you can make a study group with them. And I recommend don't go to a study group until you studied on your own. It can actually be discouraging if you go to a study group and everyone else has studied everything, they're screaming the answers out, and you're just like, I know nothing, you know? So make sure you study beforehand and have like the things you don't really understand that you know your peers might understand, like START and stuff. And just talking about it will kind of help you recall it better when you're at the test. You'll be like, well, what did Sandra say? And you'll probably remember that better. Or you guys might crack jokes along the way, and that can actually help you remember or reinforce some of the things you would have just not have remembered as well if you're sitting by yourself in a room. I also think doing study guides. So if your teacher gives you a study guide, usually most teachers always have on the top like, know these and more will be on your test or something like that, like just basically giving you like a disclaimer, like this is not all that's going to be on your test. So I highly recommend do not just rely on study guides. Study guides are great guidelines to help you figure out where you should navigate, how you're going to study, but don't rely on that strictly, because when time comes and they tell you, oh yeah, like you should have seen the top of the study guide where I said like there could be more on the exam, you'll be upset. So just, it's always better to overstudy than understudy, because you never know, you know? You never know what direction your teacher might go with the test. And if it's like multiple choice, like it can be easy to identify, you know, what it is that they're looking for. But if it's like straight up free response, that can be harder to like wing your way through. So make sure you always study, even in addition to the study guide. Now for Quizlet. So I used to love Quizlet, and I'm not trying to say like I don't like Quizlet anymore, but the reason I say I used to love Quizlet is because it helped me in a different way back then versus now. I think I'm getting into classes where like the molecular pathways and the things they want us to do and mechanisms and stuff are getting more in depth. And so like with the class I'm using as an example for this video, biology of cancer, or cancer bio, there are a lot more intricate like steps in the pathways that we have to learn. There are like new molecules and stuff like that that I've never seen before. When I use a Quizlet, yeah, you make it in order. So like you put in 1, 2, 3, everything in order of like the steps that you're supposed to go through. But whenever you do a Quizlet, for example, the Quizlet shuffles everything. So you don't have that context. So you can be learning a bunch of facts but not knowing how they come together, or you'll be learning it so random that it's like it's not sticking as well as if you had been looking at it in sequential order. So Quizlet's always good for like if you just want to make sure you're good at spelling or you're good at recalling after you've really studied. But if you're trying to start from scratch and study and just rely solely on Quizlet, I do not recommend it. What I also do is when I really want to use Quizlet, I break down like the flashcards that are related in Quizlet and star them, and then I make like I do favorites or whatever, or like starred, and then I only study the starred. Then when I'm done, I unstar those and star the next few. By doing this, it helps me like concentrate on the ones I want to concentrate on first and then learn them all together. Or you can make like 12 separate Quizlets, but if you have a lot of things to study, a lot of content, you don't want to make like 60 Quizlets because you're definitely not going to go through all of them, you know? So that's my tip on that. And last but not least, I would say try to get a good rest the night before an exam. Like at that point, no additional amount of cramming will, okay, let me not say that, because there are literally people who they don't start studying until midnight and they stay up till 4 a.m. and they do great on the test. I don't know those people, that's great. But for people like me, if you're like me, where you cram for exams, but the more pressure you put on yourself, you forget everything. Don't stay up too late on the night before the exam, because what happens is you're not gaining any more information at that point, and you're also forgetting the things that you learned because you're fatigued when you're taking the test. So recollection of everything is just going out the window. Also, you're probably second guessing yourself a lot on the test, which can be, you know, it can be frustrating, especially when you knew that you knew it, like after the exam. So make sure you get lots of sleep, lots of rest. Just spend the night before making practice tests for yourself. What I do is I get a piece of paper and I just ask myself, I go through the slides and I say, what is mitosis? What are the steps of mitosis? Or something like that. And then when I'm done doing that, I test myself and I go back to see what I got wrong. Because sometimes you can trick yourself into thinking you know something since you've seen it so many times, but you might not actually really know it, because when it's time to recall it, you don't know it. So make sure you go through and do that, so that whenever you actually like see what you got right and wrong, you know what you need to hone on more and what you need to study on more. One more tip. This is for people who have teachers who do multiple choice and short response in the same test. A lot of times, if your teacher is nice or they're just oblivious to this, the multiple choice can help you on your free response. And the multiple choice question might not actually, like the option might not be the one that got you the correct answer for that multiple choice question, but some of the key notes or the key molecules or whatever can be in that option, like D or something, and then just like use that for your free response. You gotta be smart, like the exam will work for you. But those are a few of my tips for especially science majors, but these tips can literally apply to anything, like pre-med, pre-law, whatever you are, you know. You gotta study hard, work hard, and the results will pay off. So yeah, if you like this video, please make sure you send it to your friends, send it to any students who you know are hustling, grinding, trying to get these A's, secure the bag, the GPA. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel. Leave comments below on what you guys like to do before exams. All right, bye guys.